Welcome to Study the Solopreneur, a series where we learn about the rewards and challenges of those who've built a successful career for themselves while paving the way for others like you to do the same. I am your host, Dana Gore, and I'm glad to have you with us. So let's get started. Hey everyone, I want to welcome you to this episode of Study the Solopreneur, where we meet people who began a successful journey to becoming their own boss, building their solopreneur business. I am Dana Gore, creator of IamMyImagination.com, and I am happy to bring this conversation to you today. In this episode, you will get to meet Andréa Jones. Andréa is a tender-hearted, tech-loving social media strategist and creator of the Savvy Social School, a place where students learn how to navigate and use social media wisely when it comes to business marketing. I am excited to introduce Andréa to you because I love her story. I think she's living proof that if you really want to accomplish something, even without the previous skills, you can do it and then help others to do the same. So on that note, I say let's get to it. And hello, Andréa.
Hi, thanks so much for having me today.
It is my pleasure. I am happy to have you today. How's everything going?
Yeah, just trying to stay warm. It's a little cold right now in Southern Ontario, Canada, but otherwise good.
Good. All right, Andréa. You know, I find it interesting. You started in the corporate sector and now you're a successful solopreneur. How did you get started with that and what made you leave your job?
Yeah, so I used to work for Marriott corporate in Atlanta. I was actually a manager of one of the spas there. And I had worked in a few different spas before this, but this was definitely the most corporate structure that I've ever experienced. So much red tape. You couldn't do anything without getting 10 people to approve it, that sort of thing. And it was a job. It was just a way to pay the bills. And I didn't particularly care for it, but, you know, I was there for probably about a year and a half. While I was there, I did meet my husband, who lived in Toronto, Canada at the time. So I was in Atlanta, Georgia. He's in Toronto, Canada. We dated long distance for a while. And when we decided that we wanted to be together, I was very happy to leave that job. He had a very nice job as well, both with a startup company, had more flexibility, higher pay, that sort of thing. So when it came down to make that decision, I was like, I volunteer to leave my job and move in with you and move to Canada. So for me, it was an easy decision because I didn't really care for it. I wouldn't say I wasn't happy. Like it was okay. But I wanted to do something different. I had no idea what that different thing would be, but I knew that it wasn't a hard decision for me, being that I wasn't in love with what I was doing.
Awesome. And that does help to make it exciting. You were like moving towards something as well as going through that change. So how did you progress from corporate to freelancing? Like, how did you decide to go into freelancing instead of going into another corporate career?
Yeah, and I did look at corporate when I first moved here, and it was actually a challenge just with the legal side of being able to work in another country. So I essentially had to get a position to sponsor me. Here in Canada, you have to prove that, you know, other Canadians maybe weren't qualified for the job or that sort of thing, and I wasn't high up enough for anybody to vouch for me in that sort of way. So I had the opportunity to start freelancing, and it was actually my husband's idea. I have a degree in English literature, and so I was like, I could do some writing. That seems like a very natural progression into what I could do. And so I signed up for a bunch of different sites, and I started doing a lot of things, like basically anything that anyone needed help with. I was like, sure, I could do that. And it transformed into sort of this like virtual assistant role where I was just helping a lot of entrepreneurs with some of the technical online aspects of business building. Outside of the corporate life, I had been online as a content creator since 2007, making YouTube videos primarily, but also blogging and that sort of thing. So I knew how to do a lot of these things that some people didn't know how to do. Things like uploading videos to YouTube, or writing blog posts and uploading them to WordPress, or writing social media posts and uploading them to social media. So I knew how to do all of these things. So I was just doing everything. And I really liked social media in particular. And back at my corporate job, they actually asked us in this leadership training course that we did, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And at the time I said, I want to work in social media. And this was like, I guess this was 2012, 2013. It wasn't on the radar of corporate world yet. So they said, that's not a job. Pick something else. And so it's just interesting how I started doing a lot of things online, mostly in the virtual assistant space, and doing these things that they said were previously impossible or didn't exist.
And little did they know how relevant social media would become to even corporate sectors today.
Yeah.
I think that says a lot. So, and you started out as a VA, and like, how have things evolved since then? I know you kind of touched on that a little bit, but how have you evolved into, say, like the Savvy School?
Yeah. So I started off doing a lot of services as a VA, but what I really found was it was hard to get repeatable business. So people would hire me for one thing, and then they wouldn't need me anymore. And so what I found with social media is that it's ongoing. I can charge clients on a monthly basis or weekly basis and have some sort of consistency to what I'm doing, which is always a challenge when you're freelancing. So that was one of the appeals of social media for me. The second appeal is I just like it. So I love being on social media. Like I said, I've been online since 2007 as a content creator, mostly in YouTube, but also on Instagram and Facebook, and doing all of those things that I just liked doing. And so for me, in the beginning, when working with clients as a freelancer, it was an easy decision because I already liked doing it. And then having that repeatable kind of invoicing feature to what I was doing made that decision a lot easier, so that I could have some consistency to all of the things that I was doing. So it has evolved since then from being just a general VA doing everything to really honing in on social media marketing, and even more specifically, businesses who really want to leverage the power of social media to build their awareness online and get more clients using all of these fantastic tools that are available out there.
Yeah, I think it says a lot how you can start off, you do one thing, and then you find that thing that just seems to fit. And you have all the freedom in the world if you want to go ahead and like focus on that one thing. I don't think people understand the stepping stones that they'll go through when they start out on a venture. And but I love the fact that you were able to do that. You started off doing one thing, and then you really found your niche along the way. What challenges and obstacles have you encountered along the way, and how have you handled those?
Yeah, so I think the first biggest obstacle was that I wanted to take time off. And so with this repeatable billing system that I created for myself, doing social media, it's 24/7, I found that to be very challenging. And that was my first adventure into hiring help. So I hired a team member, and that was probably the biggest obstacle to kind of me understanding how to work with another person in a virtual sense. For instance, we're not in an office together. She was in, I want to say, Chicago at the time, and I was in Toronto, Canada, and it was like, okay, so let's figure out how we collaborate. But that process really forced me to create systems for what I was doing. So previously, everything that was in my head, I now had to show someone else how I was doing things. And so that was one of the things that really helped me just further understand my natural kind of interest and affinity for this thing that I love and how I'm turning it into a business. So we had 10 clients and it was great. And so it was a really good opportunity to really figure out the differentiators between the clients and what ties them all together. Like, why are they all the clients? Why are all of these clients working for us or with us? So that was a really good challenge and obstacle that we were able to overcome. Since then, we've grown into more of an agency structure where we do have a few team members. I've grown and shrunk along the way, having more team members and fewer team members, and all of this entire process really solidified for me that I'm doing the right thing, because people will come into what we're doing and you can see that transformation of they didn't know how to do it before and now they know how to do it. And so I know we're going to talk about the Savvy Social School. That's one of the things that I absolutely love about what I'm doing is, yes, I love social media, but I also love teaching it. So I get to help my team, and that was kind of the first iteration of me helping people navigate this crazy world of social media.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that feeling of not knowing how to do something, and then like how accomplished you feel when you finally do know how to do it. For me, it's anything technical, and even the smallest things, they become big things and they give you hope, and then you're willing to maybe even think of taking on, some additional things because you finally started to prove to yourself that you can do that kind of thing. And I know that's been hard for me in time, can I do this? But clearly you can. And I think that is inspiring. So here we talked about the Savvy Social School a little bit. So I guess this is what helped you get inspired to create it. So can we talk about that a little bit, about what's in the school and how it's helping people?
Yeah, so like I said, I've been doing this for 5 years now, where clients will come to me, I'll just do the work, and then I'll teach my team how to do it as well. And some of the challenges that we would have internally, I would go to Google, I would type them in, there's no solutions out there, or the solutions are so outdated. Advice from 2009 isn't going to work in 2019. It's been 10 years. And social media has grown so much since then. And so I decided to create some of these issues that we had to solve for ourselves internally. That's really where the Savvy Social School came from, is I saw the need in the market. There wasn't really something like this out there when I first started making a lot of the training materials. And I just dove right in and started creating them. And the funny thing is, the kind of demographic of those who are interested in the Savvy Social School is different from my private clients. So my private clients typically don't like social media. They just want someone else to do it. They don't want to think about it. Yeah. But my students and members in the school, usually they're either solopreneurs, so they have to do it for themselves, mm-hmm. or they really like it and they just want to learn how to leverage it in a smarter way, how to use these tools more effectively. And so I find that very interesting from the school aspect, because I get to geek out about social media a little bit more with my members in the school than with my private clients, who are just like, just tell us what's happening once a month and then we don't talk about it again. And so the school is a membership community, mm-hmm. for people who want to learn how to leverage social media to get more followers, to get more engagement on their posts, more comments and likes, and also to find their potential clients and customers using social media marketing. So the core product in the school is a training library that has courses that teach specific platforms like Instagram and LinkedIn, but also teaches strategies like how to create images. Some of the things we have coming up as well are how to write captions, how to build a sales funnel, all of these things that go into a marketing strategy specifically focused on social media. But some of the favorite like school favorite things are the done for you posts. So I wanted to have something quick. So if you're just joining today and you're like, I don't have time to go through a course right now, I have something where you can just download a post and post it and be on your way. It's done for you. You don't have to think about it. But we also have things like a members only community. I host monthly office hours where people can ask questions and I can coach them live on the call, and lots of other bonuses and things like that. So it's really a community that's just helping people use social media for a marketing tool wisely.
Yeah, I've enjoyed the community, and I have found that the other members are very quick to respond, and they've all been very helpful. So, yeah. What would you say are some of the most common issues people deal with when it comes to using social media in general?
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things is how much of a time suck it can be. So we all can really spend a lot of time on social media. And so if we're spending all of this time on social media and we're not seeing anything from it, it can be a little bit disheartening. And so I think that's a really common struggle with a lot of business owners because we have businesses to run. We only have a finite amount of time to spend working on these things. And so one of the things that I've really been tuning into lately is how can we spend less time on social media but still be effective with that time. So general rule of thumb is we should spend about an hour creating our content for a week. If you're doing for a month, you may spend longer than that. But if you're creating your content, let's say at the beginning of the week for social media, and when I say content, I mean writing your captions and making graphics or finding a picture to use, that's your content. You should be spending about an hour on that. If you're spending more than an hour, either you need to cut back on the amount of content that you're creating, or you need to make space elsewhere. So maybe it's outsourcing another aspect of your business so that you can spend more time on social media. And so that's one of the things that I teach inside the school is how can you create a system to this content so that you don't have to start from scratch every time you sit down to write a post for social media. That's a really common struggle that we talk about in the school.
Cool. I know that we've talked a little bit, you've touched upon some of the things that were in the school. What would you say, like if somebody signed up for it, what can they expect to get? They get the community and they get the done for you post, which I've enjoyed using personally. What can they expect to benefit from as one of the students?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think sets the school apart is that you're not just thrown in to the school and expected to figure it out on your own. Because it's so nuanced, social media is very nuanced, I want to be there to guide you into saying, okay, here's what you should do first, second, and third. And so one of the very first things that I offer to students when they join the school is to hop on a call with me so we can talk about it and we can figure it out. And that can be so powerful. It's just a short phone call, but it can be so powerful to making sure you're going in the right direction and you're not wasting time searching or trying to figure it out. So outside of that call, which is really helpful, we have the training library, we have the done for you posts, and we have the toolbox, which is all of the tools that I recommend using to make things easier for you. We also have monthly office hours, and then, like you said, the community forum, which is a really great way to just get some support from other people who are doing the exact same things you're doing.
Excellent. So in addition to the school, I know that you have a podcast, and I've listened to several of them. It's a series you're covering various topics related to social media marketing. What would you say are some of the common fears that people face when they think of podcasting, and how has it helped you get your message out there?
Yeah, and I love podcasting. I sat on the idea for making a podcast for a year before I did it. So I think it's fair to say that there is some nervousness when it comes to creating this type of content. I think that, so for me, I listened to a lot of podcasts before I started my own. I think that's a really good place to start. But I also found resources online that can help me. One of them that I like to recommend is Pat Flynn has a course. He's known online as the passive income guru. But he has a course on starting podcasting. I just went through his free, I think it's like a 3-part video series. That was very informative for me for getting started. The technical aspects of like, how do you get your podcast on things like iTunes and what's the best kind of way to have it? Should you interview people? Should you be talking with yourself? Or, should you have a co-host? Like all of those questions kind of helped. The second resource that helped me was the conference, Podcast Movement. I did their 30-day challenge, and I think they have it ongoing to launch a podcast. That was also a helpful resource to get started. So just being around people who are talking about podcasting can be really helpful. And then if you're stuck on getting your message out there, some of what my clients have done in the past is just do like a brainstorming session. So let's say you want to do a podcast, but you're not sure what to talk about or if you have enough topics or whatever. Sit down for 30 minutes or an hour. Give yourself a good amount of time, uninterrupted. Turn off your phone, whatever you have to do, and just start writing. Write down every single thing you can think of that you could talk about. There's no wrong answer, and see if you see some patterns or trends, or see if you notice something where you're like, hey, I really talk a lot about this specific topic. Or if you sit down and you go, man, I don't have, it's been 10 minutes and I'm already tapped out, then it may be, an example of holding off on the podcast until you're a little bit more ready for it. So I think that brainstorming session can be really helpful to you understanding what your central message is and what topics you like to talk about.
Sounds like a good way to get to know your truth. And I think it would probably be a lot easier to develop content based on that. I love the idea of sitting down and just getting into that quiet mode and, seeing what comes out of you. What advice would you give to somebody who's either just starting out as a solopreneur or thinking about it?
Yeah, I like this question because I think that sometimes we get stuck, like we get caught up in our head too much. I know I do. And it stops us from getting started. So my best piece of advice is to just do it. Just start somewhere, even if it's starting small. So I'll use podcasting as an example. My very first iteration of a podcast, which only had 1 episode, was I talked about what I was feeling that day, and I used an app called Anchor. Very easy to get started. I just was recording on my phone, and it basically, I could listen back to it, and I was like, oh, that's not so bad. Now that idea fizzled out very quickly, but that gave me the confidence to start thinking more about podcasting. So it's a very small, low commitment thing that I did. I didn't tell anybody about it except for here now, so this is an exclusive. Actually, I should probably find it and see if it's still out there, but it was a very small thing to do to get started. And so if you're thinking about starting out as a solopreneur, if you're thinking about starting out offering services online or creating content online, find somewhere where you can start small. Find out how you can help one person, and then that will snowball from there.
That is excellent advice as far as I'm concerned, and it's what I did as well. Andréa, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I talked a lot about the school. I do have a free course that gives your listeners a little bit of a taste of what the school is like. So you can get that course by going to onlinedrea.com/free. So it's a really easy way to sign up. But if you want to just connect with me on social media, I'm everywhere at onlinedrea, and I'm always happy to chat.
Excellent. Andréa, I want to thank you so much for being my guest today. I enjoyed listening to you as I enjoy listening to all of the content that you've put out, and I find you just very pleasant to listen to, actually. And I enjoyed just hearing your story and your wisdom, and I have no doubt that our listeners are going to get a lot of value out of this conversation. So I just want to thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And folks, I want to thank you guys for watching. And if you'd like to contact Andréa, I am going to leave the links below to onlinedrea.com and to the Savvy Social School. And on any case, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Study the Solopreneur. And until the next time, take care. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Study the Solopreneur. I hope this inspired you to take action to create a rewarding and successful career for yourself, doing work you love. I am your host, Dana Gore, and if you enjoyed this conversation, I invite you to visit my website at IamMyImagination.com. Live your truth, free your mind, be creative. Until next time, take care.